My fellow Indigenous Ugandans, have been busy, but the situation in my beloved country, Uganda, required that I come back and at least make this short discussion, this short communication to all our Indigenous Ugandans abroad and in Uganda on the situation in Uganda, which has been brought about by the Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi, refugee usurper dictatorship, by having burned down the biggest university's administration building, Makerere University, by having burned down that building because of the recent demands that Museveni show us his qualifications together with his wife. We learned that the police has reported that Museveni's documents were in. I'm laughing. It's sad. I'm not really laughing. I'm being sarcastic. But anyway, it's reported that Museveni's documents were in that part of the building that burned down. Please confirm that to me. It's very strange because Museveni didn't even go to Makerere University. It seems that the Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugee British neocolonial puppet usurper dictatorship is becoming very desperate, because for the first time in Uganda we have an Indigenous Ugandan People Power movement opposing the Rwandese Burundian Tutsi refugee usurper dictatorship. In the past years, in the past 35 years, they have managed to have fake opposition parties like FDC, and even compromise some of the old parties that were actually being run by Ugandans. But these Ugandans have been compromised. Some of them, I'm sure, with threats of to their lives. So we are here today to demand that Museveni and his Rwandese Burundian Tutsi refugee usurper dictatorship step down. That Museveni should not be allowed to go on the ballot for the 2021 elections. My fellow Indigenous Ugandans, our country has been bleeding, our people have been suffering, our people have been impoverished intentionally by Museveni and his Rwandese Burundian Tutsi refugee usurper dictatorship. My fellow Indigenous Ugandans, we have been very, very patient, but the Rwandese infiltrators have continued to rob our country and commit genocide on our people. How can we not do something when many of People Power supporters are being held in jails, being tortured, and some of them being killed as we speak? I am suggesting that People Power movement make calls to all the embassies in Uganda and ask them to report the truth to their respective countries about the situation in Uganda. Ugandans in diaspora should call the White House and write letters to White House and also to their respective states, informing them about the dire situation in our beloved country, Uganda, and the danger that the Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugees are putting our people through at this time of our history in Uganda. Museveni should not be allowed to be on the ballot come 2021. First and foremost, he's a genocidary who has managed to stay in power through the support of the British, Israelis, and former American administrations. He has been protected from prosecution for crimes against humanity for over 35 years. The main reason has been that after usurping the Ugandan government, the Rwandese Tutsi refugees did something very, very sinister. They also took over the Ugandan opposition politics leadership. It's through this that they've managed to also keep the information about the Rwandese takeover of the Ugandan government and the genocide that they committed in Luwero to have been able to usurp Uganda government. This has been done by Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, and Amama Mbabazi. On many occasions, I've informed indigenous Ugandans that had it been a true indigenous Ugandan opposition political party other than FDC, Museveni's genocide in Luwero, Museveni's genocide in Acholi, Museveni's genocide in Mukura, Museveni's genocide in Kasese would have made headlines in the world by now. But instead, we were misinformed, manipulated about the Rwanda genocide, which was itself carried out by Museveni and his lieutenant Kagame, with whom he was committing genocide in Luwero to usurp Uganda government. My fellow indigenous Ugandans, we have all the proof. The mere fact that Museveni allowed Kagame to become the mere fact that Museveni allowed Kagame or appointed Kagame as the chief of Ugandan military intelligence. The mere fact that Museveni appointed Rwejema as Minister of Defense of Uganda. This is all proof that our government had been taken over by Museveni, a Rwandese Tutsi refugee, who appointed his kinsmen, Rwandese Tutsis, to the top position of Ugandan government. Well, Ugandan, I don't know if I can even call it a government. He appointed his fellow Rwandese Tutsi refugees to the most sensitive national security positions in the government of Uganda. For anybody with common sense, it's a very clear indication that Uganda government had been usurped by a Rwandese Tutsi refugee group that had imposed as indigenous Ugandans from Ankole and much of western Uganda. But unbeknown to many Ugandans, the Rwandese Tutsis also usurped Uganda with members of Rwandese who had imposed as Baganda. People like Kigongo, people like Basajja Balaba, people like Kibule. Many of these people have been ruling Uganda from Buganda, all the way, some of them to Mengo. They are Rwandese Tutsi infiltrators whose intention has all along been to usurp Ugandan government. And the time for them to do that came during the turmoil that were brought about by Obote and Idi Amin. That's how they were able to have the opportunity to deceive indigenous Ugandans and disguise themselves, because they had been in Uganda for a very long time. They could speak all the languages of Uganda. And this is why it was so easy for them to impose as one of us, to usurp our government and commit genocide, which has not stopped, which continues up to this day. We learned this from Honorable Member of Parliament, Rutamaguzi, that young men, people power supporters, are being killed in the prisons and their bodies dumped in rivers and lakes and forests. So it's up to us indigenous Ugandans, especially indigenous Ugandans in the diaspora to quickly inform the local governments and the governments, the top governments of those countries about what the Rwandese Tutsi refugees are doing in our country. They have abused their welcome. I call upon all indigenous Ugandans not to forget the young men and women that are in jail and are being tortured as we speak right now. We should not forget those young men and women. That's why we have to quickly do something about it. We have to organize ourselves wherever we are and move as a force through peaceful means and demand that the world does something to Museveni and his Rwandese Tutsi refugee usurper dictatorship that is continuing to kill and torture indigenous Ugandans. This has gone too far. It's gone too far. Museveni has destroyed almost all the traditional institutions. He has destroyed all our health institutions. He has destroyed even local markets on which indigenous Ugandans depend for their livelihood. He has destroyed this, burned them down, to put down building structures for his henchmen, for foreign corporations that bribe him millions of dollars. We saw that with the example of the Chinese businessman. Thank Almighty that President Trump was able to put this man on trial with Kutesa and Museveni in absentia. But it's very clear what is going on in Uganda. It's very clear that our oil and many of our institutions have been sold so Museveni and his Rwandese Tutsi refugees can take over our country by having impoverished our people. So it's up to us to change all this. My fellow indigenous Ugandans, we have all examples to learn from. Many of you, I'm sure, saw what happened in Burkina Faso. The People Power movement in Burkina Faso did not wait to have so many terrible things happen like what has happened in Uganda. We have waited too long. Not by our own fault, but by the fact that the Rwandese have used and continue to use terrible, brutal violence against our people. So they put fear in the minds and hearts of our people. And they've done that through Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, and Mama Mbabazi, having taken over opposition politics in Uganda. And then turning in those genuine indigenous Ugandan opposition leaders to the Rwandese Tutsi refugee usurper dictatorship to torture and kill and imprison. This is what has delayed our liberation from the Rwandese Burundian Tutsi refugee British neocolonial puppet usurper dictatorship. This is what has delayed it, by the fact that they took over Ugandan opposition politics also. Apart from taking over our government, they took over Ugandan opposition politics. We have to explain this to the world, why it has been so long, why it's been too long coming to explain this to the world, that Ugandans have been tortured, Ugandans have been killed in genocide, several genocides, not only one genocide. Ugandans were the first to be killed in genocide by Museveni Kagame, Kabila, Museveni Kagame, Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, Amama Mbabazi, Byanyima, Kutesa, Salim Saleh, and others. Ugandans were the first. After they usurped Uganda government, took over our military, they used our military to kill our people. By the way, I forgot to say, the fact that the way they managed to take over our government is they killed indigenous Ugandan grown-ups who supported them and took their children, deceived them that their parents had been killed by the dictatorship that Museveni was supposed to be fighting. That's how Museveni took over our government. He used young men and women who could not question him to kill many of our people and take over our government. This man is an evil genius at killing. He is an evil, demonic genius. The world has to know all these. Because many people must wonder, how come the man has been in Uganda for 35 years and nothing has been done to him? We have to explain all these. We have to condemn Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, Amama Mbabazi, Byanyima, who have gone around the world, even Byanyima suggesting that Museveni should become the next president of the first East African Community leadership. It's terrible. So it's people like us abroad, because at least we have some leeway to explain freely to the world. Even though our videos are being censored, our videos are being blocked, viewership is being blocked by Facebook, and I'm sure YouTube, because I am surprised with all this information that I'm giving. There are very few people watching these videos. What is going on? The world has to be informed. The world has to be informed by any means necessary. I'm trying my best. As long as my videos are on YouTube, as long as my videos are on Facebook, I'm requesting that anybody watching this video, please share it in your own way to all the people that you know. Unfortunately, I've had some people even tell me that when the videos come, they have a way of making them not be seen. So there's a campaign. You saw how Facebook came out and said that, well, a whistleblower at Facebook who was fired came out and told us that Facebook has not been reporting political manipulation by different countries against the opposition. And this is exactly what has been going on in Uganda. This is exactly what we've been facing on Facebook. Our Facebook posts have been suspended. Our Facebook posts have been, some of them, blocked. This is terrible. So what kind of world are we living in when the world refuses to listen to people like us in Uganda, where genocide of over 3 million people has been committed by these Western puppet usurper dictators, especially Britain and Israel? This is terrible. We have to inform the world. Fellow indigenous Ugandans, we have to be fearless. It doesn't help us to keep quiet when our people are dying in Uganda, when our young men and women are being killed in Uganda. It's for us indigenous Ugandans in diaspora to do this. Sometimes I'm wondering, is it that most of the Ugandans here are actually Rwandese imposters? I'm really wondering, because I know they are the only ones now who have the means to go abroad, get passports and whatnot. They are the ones who beat us at the punch from the beginning. After they took over our government, they went on all kind of deceptions, all kind of lies, and actually sent a lot of the Rwandese refugees to study on part of Ugandan scholarship, sent them abroad to study. So most of them are doctors, lawyers, and all this. But these guys are still abroad killers. They're spies for Museveni. I've told you they almost tried to kill me, to kidnap me. And I took the pictures, the photos of these people. So we also have to inform the governments where we are that Rwandese Tutsi refugees have sent hitmen to kill people like me and people like others that are raising their voices. So my suspicion is that many of Ugandans abroad are afraid to speak up because they are living with people who they think are Ugandans, but these people are Ugandan imposters. They speak all our languages. We can't even tell. But it's up to us, we Ugandans who know we are true indigenous Ugandans, to be fearless and even tell those Rwandese that we know are Rwandese here, trying to kill us, trying to shut us up, trying to change the narrative. This is what has happened. When information should have been told to the American officials that many people, Besigye and Namboze, have been telling us they're going to talk to, these people, they don't say the truth to the American representatives. They don't tell them that our government was usurped by the Rwandese. They don't tell them that the Rwandese have committed genocide in Uganda, because they are the same people protecting each other. They have a conflict of interest. Mugisha Muntu, Amama Mbabazi, Besigye, Namboze, all these people we understand are Rwandese that are impostering as indigenous Ugandans. Yes, we see Namboze recently came up and said some tough things on Balaba. Balaba is nobody. Balaba is, we want to hear her say real things about Rwandese having taken over our government. We want Namboze to come and say it. We want Besigye to come and say it. They won't say it because they are Rwandese themselves. Burundian. Muntu, Mbabazi, Lukwago, they're Lukwago and Mbabazi, they are Burundian. So how are they going to say that, oh, accuse themselves? They're not going to do it. They won't. So it's up to us indigenous Ugandans. No matter how few we are abroad, I am really suspicious that most of the people calling themselves Ugandans here in America that are going to all these institutions that have been here since the regime came to power, I am suspicious these people are Rwandese sleeper cells that have gone on to immerse themselves in the cultures of all Ugandans, assimilated, but at the same time, they are working for the Rwandese Burundian Tutsi 50-year master plan. We all know about the Tutsi 50-year master plan. To take over Uganda, rule Uganda for 50 years, and have their children come and rule Uganda to build a Tutsi empire. They added the Hima. The Hima were added for convenience because the Hima, the Rwandese Tutsi refugees, are the one now impostering as the Bahima and impostering as the royalists, because that's why they practically ended, maybe you can say they refused to reinstall the king of Ankole, the Mugabe, because they knew if the Mugabe would come back, then people would know who really the Rwandese are. So to cover that up, now they become even, some of them are even claiming to be royal members of the royal family of Ankole. Well, they are not. That's why they stopped the kingdom from coming back. Because they know if the kingdom comes, true Bahima will be known. So now they are the ones identifying themselves as Bahima. So that's why I'm appealing to indigenous Uganda to be very, 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 very careful on how we go about being allowing ourselves to fall into the trap of saying that it's the Banyankole. I am very glad that my work, me as a Westerner, that came on Radio Munansi, been on social media, trying to change the narrative about the Banyankole, the narrative about the Bachiga. I am very proud that I did this work almost alone, trying to inform indigenous Ugandans that the people they are calling Westerners are actually Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugees who came and settled in Ankole at the mercy of our people. In Kigezi, our people helped them to settle. In Toro, they learned our culture so well, they even adopted our names, and they became sleeper cells within our communities. And they are the ones now killing us, confusing us. Sometimes you hear them in Buganda, Toto Baganda names, Toto Luganda, Good Luganda, abusing the people in Ankole, abusing the Westerners, so that we can start to kill each other or hate each other. That, oh, the Baganda are bad because they're insulting the Westerners or Banyankole. Well, actually, the same people in Ankole insulting the Baganda are the same Rwandese cousins of the ones who are in Buganda. They know each other, but we don't know who they are. The Rwandese in Ankole and the Rwandese in Buganda who are ruling us right now on the other parts of Uganda in Busoga. Many of them are also in Busoga with Basoga names, Basoga language. They speak it like Basoga. So you can tell these sleeper cells are the most dangerous people to our people. That's why Uganda has lost 3 million people, because we're being killed by the people we know who live among us. That's why I've always said these people are the worst psychopaths that you could ever imagine in the history of Africa, because they live among us. They speak our languages. They have our names. And they're killing us from within our communities without knowing who our killers are. It's very sad, my fellow indigenous Ugandans. That's why we have to do something immediately, because Museveni has gone too far. The Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugees have abused the welcome. I've tried to call upon the youth, the Rwandese youth who are born in Uganda, to separate from their fathers and their relatives that they know are committing genocide on Ugandans. Join People's Power. Because these young men, it's not their fault. They didn't kill people in Luwero. They didn't kill, but their parents and their relatives have been participating in the genocide in Uganda. So I'm calling upon any Rwandese that has sense now is the time to join People's Power. I've said no Rwandese community leaders have come and apologized to Ugandans that what Museveni did They know Museveni is a Rwandese. Many of them know it. That's why Museveni forced the Rwandese into the Ugandan constitution. That the Rwandese are a tribe of Uganda, which is illegal. So these people are in Uganda, but they never tell us they are Rwandese. They always say they are Baganda, they have Baganda names, they have Batoro names, they have Banyankole names. This information has to come out, because if we keep it within Uganda and not spread the word around, the Rwandese are going to kill us and end up making us slaves, because the Rwandese are ready to sell us out to the British. They've already sold us to the British and the Indians. So we have to cry out loud against this plan to exterminate our people, so the Rwandese can become dominant and the British, the French now, you see the French are building the pipeline. My fellow indigenous Uganda, yes, the pipe is being built, but we should not allow that pipeline to carry oil. We should stop that oil before we should stop that pipeline before it starts carrying oil, because after it starts carrying oil, it will be detrimental to our environment if it breaks, or is cut, or somehow because of a struggle cut in pieces, then the oil will spill all over. We need to stop that pipe before it starts. We need to stop that pipe because Museveni is already stealing the money. Museveni has given Magufuli a bigger share of the pipeline. Why should he give Magufuli a big share of the pipeline of our oil? Why? We call upon the Tanzanian people, Magufuli, to change his mind on making deals with the genocidary of indigenous Ugandans. Magufuli is like the British Prime Minister, Chamberlain, who signed a deal with Hitler, thinking that Hitler was going to do good for Europe. But instead Hitler bombed London. So Magufuli, please, you know you are a good leader to your people in Tanzania. We've seen how you're doing. You've seen you are developing your country. But please don't do it on the backs of indigenous Ugandans. Please, Magufuli. Tanzania has been a friend, a partner in the East African community before the Rwandese came in the picture. The Rwandese came from a francophone country, usurped Uganda government, and please, Tanzania, you should be the one to know that we Ugandans have been your partners. Your people have studied in Uganda. The same university where your people studied, I think even Nyerere studied at Makerere, has been burned down. Please, Magufuli, do not go along with the pipeline agreement, because Museveni is, first of all, Museveni is a thief, Museveni is a genocider. Please don't make the mistake that the British Prime Minister Chamberlain and the Russians made, signing a deal at Sudetenland. Russians signed a deal with Germany at Sudetenland, thinking that Germany would not attack them. But they made a big mistake. They ended up coming with Americans to fight Germany and defeated Germany. Had to kill 6 million Germans to free Europe from a warmongering tribe of Europe. We indigenous Ugandans should galvanize the whole of Africa against the Rwandese Tutsi refugee minority, so that we kick them out of our country, or they come and help us to send them out of our country, make arrangement where Museveni and his Rwandese Tutsis leave Uganda. I thank you for listening, my fellow indigenous Ugandans. Please, let's do something immediately. Our young men and women are dying in the prisons in Uganda. There's a slow genocide going on, as Honorable Member of Parliament Rutamaguzi informed us. So it's up to us, indigenous Uganda, to inform the entire world, especially we here in the diaspora. I'm calling upon Dr. Kiyingi. Dr. Kiyingi, please, if you say you are an indigenous Muganda, I cannot believe that you have not gone along to inform the world, travel the world. Mr. Kiyingi, you are a rich man, you are a cardiologist, you say you have plan B, but the plan B, you already told us that the plan B unfortunately seems to be failing. The fact that the people you are working with supposedly turned in the weapons that you had given them, and then that same man is a member of parliament in Uganda, is very disturbing to me. And that's why I've decided to come publicly and inform you that plan B is not going to work with Besigye and you, because you have not shown us that you can do a right move to get rid of Museveni. And I was very disturbed when you denied me a chance to suggest that we expose the Rwandese to the entire world of how they've usurped our government, by you telling me that not all Rwandese are bad and some Rwandese have done good. Mr. Kingi, I'm going to keep saying these statements to you until you come on board and join us in the diaspora, especially you, Dr. King, in Australia, in America. Inform the world, write letters to the UN, join us to expose the Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugee usurper dictatorship and the genocide they've committed on indigenous Ugandans. Mr. King, I don't mind if you are Rwandese, but please be sincere with us. Please be sincere with us. I am saying this with a lot of pain because I felt insulted when you told me that some Rwandese have done good for us when the Rwandese have committed genocide on over 3 million indigenous Ugandans. And they don't seem to be apologetic. They don't seem to be remorseful. They continue to torture us. They continue to fight us on social media, telling us they will lure us back last, telling us that Museveni is going to rule us, is going to win the elections. No, Museveni should not even be allowed on the ballot. Ladies and gentlemen, let us pass this message around and do something about it. Let us learn from the people of Burkina Faso who did not allow Kampori to go ahead and change the constitution of Burkina Faso to allow himself to learn another time. They went ahead and marched in the thousands, hundreds of thousands, and burned down the parliament building. They burned down the parliament building, and Kampori had to run out of the country to Ivory Coast. Another French, actually, I understand Ouattara is not even Ivorian. So there is this whole move by former colonizers to use African immigrants on fringes of our societies, on fringes of our societies, to take over the local governments which have accommodated them. Ouattara is said is not even a real, what you call, is not an Ivorian. He came from Burkina Faso. And surprisingly, he's the same man who took in a Burkinabe, a guy from Burkina Faso who had been oppressing his people, where his father, an immigrant, came from. So there is this move by colonizers to use immigrants in the in the respective countries that they immigrated to take over the governments of those countries, because somehow they're going to be greedy and going to be selfish and not feel as much for the people that they take over. So this must be understood. They did it in Central Africa with Seleka, who were just miners from West African countries, and gave them power to take over Central Africa. Fortunately, the people in Central Africa found out very quickly and organized as a whole, used everything possible. It was brutal, but my dear, I think they stopped something maybe worse that was coming to them, because we see what has happened to Uganda. We've lost 3 million people. Wouldn't it have been nice if we had found out that Rwandese had taken over our government and done everything to fight them out of our country? So there we are, my fellow indigenous Ugandans. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you the best. May the Creator Almighty of our ancestors continue to guide us and protect us. Good night.